Hello there my fellow gamers. Alienware has always been about over-the-top gaming notebooks that are more than the competition in almost every way. The original M16, for example, from last year was one of the biggest 16 inches you could get your hands on. So you could imagine our surprise when they introduced the update for 2024. While most other manufacturers just upgraded their designs to Intel's or AMD's new CPUs, the M16R2 is a very clear departure from its predecessor. Not only is it much smaller and lighter, but it also marks a push from Dell's gaming brand to make laptops with the Alien head more affordable and accessible to gamers. Sounds good so far? Well, it does make a lot of sense, but in a way it also makes the M16 a lot more mainstream, and in stark contrast to last year's model, it maxes out with an RTX 4070. If all of this still makes for a well-rounded gamer, well, we will tell you right after the intro. Our sample of the complete redesign comes with Intel's Meteor Lake Core Ultra 7 155H, the RTX 4070 mentioned before, running at up to 140 watts, 16 gigs of RAM and a 1TB SSD. In typical Dell and Alienware fashion, you have many configuration options when ordering your own M16. You can upgrade your CPU experience to the Core Ultra 9, add more RAM or storage, or if you want to save a few bucks, downgrade to either an RTX 4060 or 4050. All configurations share a snappy 240Hz QHD+ IPS panel with no additional options being available. While the new M16 is still unmistakably an Alienware machine, I'm a little torn about which one I prefer. Of course, if you move around a lot, the reduced weight and backpack space can be a very welcome change. But I cannot really help the feeling that something is missing from a purely design perspective, because that's in the end what Dell did. They took away the large cooling exhaust behind the display. That's so typical for Alienware notebooks. And that also means no RGB in the back, but I guess that is something we can all live with, especially since they made amends and illuminated the touchpad, which is also a lot bigger than before since the keyboard has also been moved up for a more traditional placement. What hasn't changed is the overall build quality. The M16 is a quality machine with a rigid chassis, barely any flex and solid hinges. And as always, I'm a very big fan of the soft touch material covering the keyboard deck. Despite the size reduction, there are almost no sacrifices when it comes to ports, and the M16 is still very well equipped for almost all occasions. On the right we get a pair of USB-A 3.2 Gen 2s and unfortunately only a microSD card reader with so-so transfers but pretty fast read speeds, while the left side of the chassis houses the audio combo port and a fast 2.5 Gigabit Ethernet chip. In typical Alienware fashion, you can still find the remaining ports on the back, and next to the HDMI 2.1 and the power connector, you get a Thunderbolt 4 with power delivery and an additional USB-C 3.2 Gen 2. So the only thing really missing from the original M16 is the mini DisplayPort, which does come in handy from time to time, but is still something you can easily live without in my opinion. Wireless transfer rates are a little slow compared to the competition, and the 2-megapixel webcam once again only delivers average quality, but lets you access your notebook with your face thanks to Windows Hello support. The internal layout of the 16-inch gamer has changed significantly, but thankfully without making considerable changes to your potential upgrade possibilities. While the 2023 M16 offered 3 NVMe slots in total, 2 of those just supported the shorter 20-30 variants. So while you only have 2 slots in the new model, both are for the much more common 20-80 SSDs that are usually more affordable and come in higher capacities. In addition, you can easily exchange or upgrade your system memory with 2 SODIMMs. When it comes to inputs, I think I said it in our M18 review already, but this is hands down one of my favorite keyboards on a laptop right now. It may not be mechanical, but when it comes to travel and tactility, it is very, very close, and this is simply a great option for both games and typing longer texts. And the M16 was my go-to when sitting down to write scripts for our videos. The layout is also very streamlined and should make your fingers feel right at home just after a few minutes. Alienware has introduced stealth mode in this one for the very first time, and just by pressing the F2 button, your machine is set to silent and all of your RGB illumination is set to white. It's a small gimmick, but very handy nonetheless. The touchpad works alright for the most part, but its plasticky surface and spongy clicks can unfortunately not quite keep up with the excellent keyboard. One area that repeatedly troubled us in most of our recent Alienware reviews was screen quality, and unfortunately the story continues with the M16. While the refresh rate has been bumped up to 240Hz and response times are very snappy for an IPS, our measurements reveal average numbers across the board for this one. So while OLED or mini LED panels aren't offered in this price range, even in competing notebooks, laptops like the Legion Pro 5 for example usually offer much brighter displays. That said, contrast is pretty solid, and so is factory calibration. So once again, it's definitely not a bad screen, especially if you get the M16 mostly for gaming, especially for competitive titles, but it also does not really offer something to write home about. In addition to the visual changes, the smaller chassis also required the transition from the much more powerful HX CPUs that have been available both from AMD and Intel in the M1601 to Intel's new Meteor Lake silicon. It's clear that Alienware prioritized the GPU when putting together the new M16, since it's essentially slower than last year's i7-13700HX for example, while it does represent one of the fastest Core Ultra 7 equipped notebooks we have seen so far. While this does sound like a downgrade, and it is in certain use cases, most workloads today do not really ask for pure CPU power alone. And especially games are usually GPU bound anyways, so I can easily get behind Dell's decision here. Especially when keeping battery life in mind, but more on that later. System performance as measured with PCMark is well within the average for similarly equipped notebooks, and I also had a very good time with the M16 as well. And where the original was more like a pure gaming machine that you would hardly move around a lot, I found myself reaching for the R2 a lot, even when doing more everyday kind of stuff, like just surfing the web, writing scripts and all of that. Which really shows that Dell's decision to streamline the whole experience was a very good choice and well executed at that. The command center worked quite reliably as well, which is unfortunately something that wasn't guaranteed on older Alienware systems. And we only encountered the same bug with unreliable sleep behavior as we already observed on the larger M18. SSD speeds are solid throughout and can be maintained without a problem during our torture tests. While it is a bit of a bummer that you cannot get the M16 with RTX 4080 or 4090s anymore, the 4070 performs very well in the smaller chassis. And since this is probably what most of you will buy anyway, it makes sense to build the chassis accordingly. Nvidia's higher-end mid-ranger is able to secure one of the top spots in our Synthetics performance rating, and the 4070 is properly able to stretch its legs when it comes to pure GPU grunt. In our 1080p gaming rating, however, competitors like the Legion 7i, which is equipped with a much faster i9-14900HX, can easily outperform the M16 in more CPU-bound titles. In more modern games, or when playing in the native resolution though, the M16 is able to fight back, and in general, you get what you would expect from a mobile RTX 4070. Please enjoy our benchmarks, and for much more information and our detailed benchmark results, please head on over to our written article on the website right after finishing this video. Just as with the M18, switching between modes on the smaller sibling does not really do a lot when it comes to performance. So venturing from balance to performance is not really netting you a huge benefit, but you will end up with a louder machine. To give you a subjective impression, we added some noise samples for you, and as always you can find our dB results once more in the written review. I teased it earlier before, but where the older Alienware notebooks have not really been known for stellar battery life, the new M16 is simply impressive. With more than 8 hours in our Wi-Fi web surfing test, it turns the sleek 60-incher not only into a capable gaming machine, but also a great everyday companion away from any outlets, be it in college, university or just the coffee shop around the corner. And that actually almost sums up this review. Yes, we would have wished for higher-end GPU options and maybe even a slightly more exciting display, but if you keep in mind the price, the amazingly well-built chassis with a ton of ports and an excellent keyboard, creature comforts like stealth mode and G-Sync, the new Alienware M16 is a clear win in my opinion, and delivers once again as an amazing gaming laptop that can also be your primary work and study machine. But please folks, let me know what you think, sound off in the comments below. That should also be it for today. Thanks a ton for watching, do not forget to hit that like and sub button on your way out, and I cannot wait to see you all in the next one. Take care.